like to talk to you about the three main advantages that E-mount provides. Maybe you know E-mount due to this kind of photo camera, of a still camera, the NEX3, NEX5, NEX7, or the new generation that we announced last year. So one very big advantage is, as you can see here, we are hosting several different sensor sizes. So in this case, this is an NEX5T. The sensor is an APS-C. So the sensor is very similar to the one that we can find on the NEX-EA50. In this case, this is an Alpha A7S. So you know that the sensor is a full frame. You can see that the diameter of the E-mount allows to use different sensor sizes. Also, we can host, for instance, a Super 35, which is the sensor size that we are using on the FS100. In this case, in that case, in Full HD resolution. We can use a Super 35 but 4K resolution, like in the case of FS700 or PXW FS7. The second main advantage is, apart from being too wide, it is a very short mount. As you can see, it is very, very short. So the distance between the sensor and the top of the mount is very short, just 18 millimeters. In that case, this allows us to build or construct our own lens systems from that plane on. So, for instance, let's say that we've been working with EF lenses and we don't want to get rid of them, and we want to preserve because they can be good lenses. So in that case, we can use an adapter like this one. This is not a speed booster, this is a metabones that converts our camera, which is originally E-mount, into an EF mount camera. So now we can work with any EF lens in front of it. You simply need to be careful with one thing. For instance, in this case, I'm having two lenses. Those are E-mount lenses, but as you can see, the frame for leaving the light passing is different. So you need to be careful because as I was explaining before, the sensor size is not the same on an APS-C camera as on a full frame camera. So if we use a full frame lens on an APS-C sensor, what we find is that we are using just the central part of the light. So we are doing something like a tele. Instead of using the whole image, the whole light, we are using just the central part. And the augment ratio is approximately 1.5, 1.4. So a 24 wide angle lens will be converted into approximately a 36. So our lenses are going to be more tele lenses. The opposite case, if we are using a lens that is designed for an APS-C or Super 35 sensor, and we install that into a full frame, then in that case we are going to see some vignetting, probably some vignetting on the corners. That's because the cone of light is not capable of occupying the whole sensor. The sensor is bigger than the cone of light that lays on it. So in that case we will see that typical cornering effect on the sides. From my point of view, it is better, obviously, not only due to the vignetting, but also due to the light, to use a full frame lens, if I need to choose, full frame or APS-C over an APS-C Super 35 sensor. Why? Because in this case, if I'm using a native APS-C lens, there is no problem, but if I am using a full frame lens, then we are using just the central part, as I was talking before. So in that case, there is less chromatic aberration on the corners. We are capturing the noble part of the light. So we would be avoiding some chromatic aberrations or some effects due to the sights on the lens. And finally, the third main advantage is, as you can see, the camera, this kind of camera, has a Hotshoe on the lower part. You can see that on the NEX5T, on the Alpha A7S. So what is the nice advantage of this? If we are using a lens, for instance, natively an alpha lens, and in either E-mount or A-mount, that allows to use, for instance, let's say autofocus, then we can operate over the lens from the camera or from the camcorder. For instance, that is very important, especially in video, not so much when we are working in the still environment. But for video, that is very important. What would happen if I am using, for instance, a lens that is passive? In this case, I'm using FD lenses like this one. This is a 50mm, this is a 135. In this case, as this lens is manual, there is no need to have a hot communication, any protocol between the lens and the mount. So in this case, it's not so relevant to have obviously a Hotshoe. Sorry, let me install it. So now in this case it's a passive lens, it's like a totally passive lens, but I can use it on my camera and there is no need to communicate the camera with the lens. Obviously I will need to configure my camera to use it in manual mode. So in that case I would be avoiding some problems that I could find as for instance watching my camera saying no, I cannot shoot because I cannot find any lens. So you can see that I have no problem in using this in this case FD Canon FD lenses. These are very cheap lenses. This one is a second hand and costed me about 40-50 euros. This one, which is a very acceptable quality, a 50mm, costed me about 20 or 30 euros in a very good looking status. These are very typical from the 80s, so you can use some very cheap lenses on your camera, or you can go into whatever you want. For instance, you can use PL lenses if you are working in a cinema environment. Obviously, probably you're not going to do that with this camera, but imagine that you are working with an FS7 or an FS700 and you are shooting in a cinema environment as a B camera or probably the main camera. In that case, it's important to use a very high quality lens, and probably you don't need to remote it, or you just need fixed focal lenses. In that case, you can use an adapter that converts E-mount into PL, and then you can shoot with the same systems as on classic cinema. So I hope you can see the advantages of working with this kind of mount, and you can mainly, let's say, understand why we are incorporating this kind of mount into our professional camcorders. Also, the concept is very similar to the FZ mount that we had on the F3, F5 or F55. They are very wide mount and very short, so they can work with whatever lens. In that case, it is very typical to use PL lenses, so that is why we provide by default an adapter from FZ to PL. So thank you very much for taking a look on this video.